The Maplewood Diner wasn't the kind of place people came to impress anyone. It was small, old-fashioned, and simple. Faded photographs of the town's baseball team lined the walls, and the leather booths had cracks patched with duct tape. But for the locals, it was a treasure. It was where old friends met for coffee, families gathered after Sunday church, and high school kids came for milkshakes after late-night games. At the far corner booth, Margaret Bennett sat with her hands folded on the table, her cane resting beside her. Her hair was silver, pulled back neatly into a bun, and her deep blue eyes carried both kindness and sorrow. To everyone in town, she was Grandma Maggie, though her real grandchildren rarely visited. She had lived through joys and heartbreaks, but nothing weighed on her heart more than the memory of her missing daughter, Lily. It had been over 20 years since that night. A fire at the foster home where Lily had been staying tore through the building, leaving devastation behind. Maggie had been told her daughter didn't survive, yet a part of her had never believed it. She carried Lily's birth bracelet in her purse every day and prayed silently, "Lord, give me a sign, just one sign, that my girl is alive." Her son, Robert, slid into the booth across from her, adjusting his tie. He was a successful man now, always busy, always rushing. He didn't share his mother's quiet faith and often teased her for holding on to false hope. Today, he had taken time off to drive her to her doctor's appointment and insisted they grab lunch afterward. "Mom, you need to eat something," Robert said, tapping the menu. "Doctor said your blood pressure's low. No skipping meals." Maggie smiled faintly, her voice raspy. "I know, son. I just don't have much of an appetite these days." Before Robert could argue, a voice interrupted. "Good afternoon." They both looked up. A young waitress stood beside their booth, pen and notepad in hand. She wore the diner's standard uniform, black slacks and a burgundy polo, but there was something about her presence that immediately drew attention. Her smile was polite, but her eyes, large, warm hazel eyes with flecks of green, seemed to shine brighter than the afternoon sun filtering through the windows. "My name's Emily," she said cheerfully. "I'll be taking care of you today. Can I start you off with something to drink?" Robert glanced at the menu. "Coffee for me, black." But Maggie didn't answer. Her hands, resting on the table, began to tremble. Her gaze locked on Emily's face, and her breath caught in her throat. Emily noticed and tilted her head. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Maggie leaned forward, her voice barely a whisper, trembling with both disbelief and awe. You have my daughter's eyes." The words slipped out so softly, yet they hung in the air like thunder. Emily blinked, confused. I'm sorry." Robert quickly intervened, giving an awkward laugh. "Please don't mind her. My mom sometimes." But he stopped when he saw his mother's expression. Maggie's eyes were glistening with tears, her lips quivering as though she had seen a ghost. Emily shifted uncomfortably, uncertain whether to smile or step back. Her heart pounded unexpectedly, as though the stranger's words had triggered something deep inside her. "I didn't mean to startle you," Maggie said, her hand reaching out across the table. "But those eyes, those are Lily's eyes. My little girl's." The young waitress swallowed hard. She had been called many things before, pretty, polite, hard-working, but never had anyone looked at her with such trembling recognition. "I don't really know much about my family," Emily admitted softly, lowering her gaze. "I grew up in foster care. No records of my birth parents. No names. Nothing." Maggie's body stiffened. She clutched her cane as her voice broke. "Foster care. Child, where?" Emily hesitated, her throat dry. "I was told I was placed after a fire. The home I was in burned down when I was just a baby. They said there were no surviving relatives." The clatter of plates in the background seemed to fade. Even the conversations around them softened, as if the entire diner held its breath. Robert's face turned pale. His fork slipped from his hand, clinking against the plate. Slowly, he turned to his mother. "Mom," he whispered hoarsely, "that's the same fire, the one they said." He couldn't finish the sentence. Maggie's tears streamed freely now. She reached out, her trembling fingers brushing Emily's hand. "Oh, my lord, can it be? After all these years?" Emily's chest tightened. She didn't know why, but her own eyes filled with tears. She felt an invisible pull, as though some hidden part of her soul had been waiting for this exact moment. Robert rubbed his temple, his rational mind at war with what he was hearing. "Mom, please, don't do this to yourself. Don't do this to her. But Maggie ignored him. Her wrinkled hand gripped Emily's gently but firmly, her voice cracking with emotion. Tell me, child, do you know your birthday? Yes, Emily whispered. May 14, 1999. Maggie gasped audibly. Her heart hammered in her chest, her breathing uneven. That's Lily's birthday. My daughter, she was born that day. Robert's jaw tightened. He wanted to dismiss it as coincidence, but the trembling in his mother's voice, the unmistakable hazel green eyes staring back at them, made his skepticism falter. Emily felt her knees weaken. She steadied herself on the table, her own hands shaking. Are you saying, you think I'm your... Before she could finish, the manager's voice rang out from across the room. Emily. Table 5's waiting on their order. The spell shattered, the ordinary world crashing back into place. Emily wiped her eyes quickly, murmuring, I should go, but she didn't move. She looked at Maggie again, her heart pounding with 1,000 unspoken questions. And there, in the corner booth of a small-town diner, 3 lives teetered on the edge of a truth that could rewrite everything they thought they knew. Emily stood frozen at the corner booth, torn between her duty as a waitress and the overwhelming wave of emotion crashing inside her. The diner's ordinary hum had returned, coffee pouring, silverware clinking, murmured conversations, but for Emily, Robert, and Grandma Maggie, the world had changed. The manager had already stalked back to the counter, shaking his head, muttering about slackers, but Emily couldn't force her feet to move. Instead, she lowered herself hesitantly into the booth across from Maggie, sliding into the seat as though drawn by something greater than herself. Maggie clasped Emily's hand with both of hers, her wrinkled fingers trembling. My child, she whispered, I need to know more. Please, anything you remember. Emily's eyes darted nervously toward the kitchen door. I don't remember much. I was told I was rescued as a baby. Placed in the system after a fire. They said my parents were gone. That there was nobody left for me. She paused, her voice catching. I spent years bouncing between foster homes. No one ever told me who I was, or where I came from. Maggie gasped softly. She pressed a hand to her chest, her heart aching. All these years, they told me you were gone. That I had to bury you in my heart. But I never believed it. Every night I prayed to God for a miracle. And here you are, sitting right in front of me. Robert leaned forward, his brow furrowed. His rational mind screamed that this couldn't be true, but his gut whispered otherwise. Emily, he said carefully, do you have any papers? Birth certificate, adoption records, something that could prove. Emily shook her head sadly. Only what the foster agency gave me, and that wasn't much. Just that I was born May 14, 1999. No listed parents. No hospital records. The mention of the date sent Maggie's tears spilling again. She turned to her son, her voice breaking. Robert, you remember your sister's birthday. It's the same day. How can this be coincidence? Robert rubbed his temples, his eyes damp. He had spent years watching his mother grieve, dismissing her hope as denial. But seeing Emily, her eyes, her smile, her birthday, it was like watching a ghost step back into the world. It lines up, he admitted reluctantly. Emily's throat tightened, her own tears streaming now. Are you saying, you think I might be, your Lily? Her voice trembled, as though speaking the words aloud might make them vanish like smoke. Maggie reached out and pulled Emily into her arms. The old woman sobbed against her shoulder, her voice muffled but full of conviction. You are my Lily. I feel it in my soul. A mother knows her child. Emily clung to her, tears soaking into the fabric of Maggie's cardigan. For the first time in her life, she felt the warmth of arms that didn't just comfort her as a stranger's kindness, but as something deeper, something that felt like home. Robert sat silently, watching his mother cradle the young woman. His chest tightened as memories of his little sister, her laughter, her tiny hands, flooded his mind. Could it really be her? Had she survived all this time? The other diners began to notice. A couple at the next booth whispered to each other, while an elderly man near the counter leaned forward, curiosity in his eyes. There was something magnetic about the scene unfolding, a waitress, an old woman, and a middle-aged man clinging to the possibility of a miracle. Emily finally pulled back, wiping her eyes. If there's even a chance this is true, how do we know for sure? Robert straightened. We'll do a DNA test. That's the only way. No guessing, no coincidences. Science will tell us the truth. Maggie nodded eagerly, though her heart already knew. Yes, whatever it takes. But child, I want you to know something. No matter what that test says, you are a blessing. And if you are my Lily, then the years of my prayers were not in vain. Emily's lips trembled. For years, she had longed for a family, for someone to call her own. And now, an old woman's tearful whisper had opened a door she never imagined could exist. That evening, after her shift, Robert drove Emily and Maggie to a clinic. The test was quick, a simple swab of the cheek. But the wait for the results was agonizing. For Maggie, it was a battle between hope and fear. For Robert, it was a fight between logic and belief. For Emily, it was the terrifying possibility of having her identity rewritten in an instant. 3 days later, they gathered again at the diner, sitting in the same corner booth where it all began. The envelope with the DNA results lay on the table, untouched. Maggie's hands shook as she stared at it. Son, you open it. I can't. Robert hesitated, then tore the seal carefully. He unfolded the paper, his eyes scanning the lines. His breath caught. His voice cracked. It's a match. 99.9%. Maggie gasped, covering her mouth as sobs of joy erupted. She reached for Emily's hands, squeezing them tightly. My Lily. My baby girl. I knew it. I knew you were out there. Emily's tears flowed freely, her heart pounding as she whispered, I have a family. You always did, Maggie said, pulling her into her arms once more. You were never lost in my heart. And now, by God's grace, you've been found. Robert, overcome with emotion, reached across the table and hugged them both. Welcome home, sis, he whispered, his voice trembling. Around them, the diner patrons clapped softly, some wiping their own eyes. Even the gruff manager who had scolded Emily earlier stood in the corner, his jaw slack, as though realizing he had just witnessed something sacred. That night, Emily didn't go back to an empty apartment. She went home with Maggie and Robert. For the first time in her life, she sat at a family table where someone prayed over dinner and called her by name. Not as a waitress, not as a foster kid, but as daughter and sister. The reunion didn't erase the years of loss, but it gave them something greater, proof that love, no matter how long it takes, always finds its way back. Moral of the story. Family is not just written in blood, it is carried in the heart. Love never stops searching, and even in the darkest chapters, miracles can rewrite the story of our lives.